Hello, my name is Sharia Hutchison, and I chose to do my article over Literally Literacy by Melanie Wallendorf. So this article was mostly about just literacy in general, but it mostly focused on the concept of functional literacy and what that is. So some of the ideas, the major ideas in this article, is that literacy is not a determinant to being able to read or not. That's not how she interpreted literacy, but it's more of a continuous skill of higher level thinking skills in relation to um, reading and writing that continues into adulthood. Functional literacy, she talked a lot about that, and that's kind of how she approached literacy in general, and she defined it as a means of determining true literacy. She also pulled from many different studies, and she found that in these articles and studies that many adults in the US perform below expected functional literacy levels. Next, she talks about how many adults, while they are considered to be functionally literate, they have now become illiterate due to convenience or preference. They prefer not to read, it's more of a choice. And while society today sees nothing wrong with that, it's consumer choice, that can be detrimental because you are losing those skills that you once had, and especially those deeper thinking and the ability to conceptualize things that cannot be shown visually, concepts that cannot be shown visually. And so we're losing that skill, which can affect those non-concrete concepts. She also talks about functional literacy and how it can be impeded by a combination of economic status and quality of education available. She specifically talks about how African American and Hispanic families typically are in that lower socioeconomic status because of where they live, and their quality of education is lower. And so because of this, they are considered at risk from the moment that they enter school, and continue to stay there because of the lower quality of education. Also talking about trends of functional literacy, and how it's similar across the world, but for other reasons. Typically, while some of it does involve socioeconomic status, some of it is contributed to gender inequality in those countries that are a lot of times considered third world. And so that affects many women in those countries and whether or not they are literate. So they also have considerably high levels of literacy in their own home language, not just in English. Another thing that I thought was really interesting that she focused a large portion of the article about was the 6 factors that can be impacted by functional literacy and can influence how readers at lower level of literacy function in society, such as persuasion, decision making, the meaning of products and branding, health behaviors, consumption, identity, and resistance, and the internet. The one that I really want to focus on, just because I found it very interesting, was products and branding. She made a really interesting point in that what we considered to be brand loyalty, people buying name brands rather than the generic, which oftentimes are containing the same exact ingredients and the same exact proportions. And so very similar quality, just cheaper without the branding. A lot of people have that brand loyalty because they do not have the literacy to understand that those ingredients are the same. They don't have that comprehension to compare the two. And so I thought that was very interesting, as well as health behaviors. She mentioned that a lot of times those at higher literacy levels have better quality health because they are able to read through the medications or the articles that suggest how to live healthier, better lives and can make those better choices. Whereas those who function at lower levels do not have access to that understanding. And so they tend to have more unhealthy lives. And she contributes it or relates it to many different health concerns such as cancer, uh, asthma, things like that, diabetes. It was quite interesting. And then finally, society is a major determining factor in a child's ability to improve their literacy skills. So what these children are being exposed to both at school and at home, a combination of all the previous mentioned information can greatly impact their literacy and their choice in a literacy. Some takeaways that I thought of from this article, just for anyone in general, are that children are influenced by their parents' reading habits, and so if their parents are choosing to avoid reading sources, if they see their parents not reading newspapers or books or magazines, then they're probably going to continue that habit. If their parents watch news on TV rather than read a newspaper, that's probably what they will do as well. And so they're greatly impacted by that. And I think in extension, also their teachers, if they see their teachers using a lot of videos and things like that, rather than being read to or watching their teacher read or things like that, I think that will also impact it because we spend a large amount of our time with those students. Maintaining literacy is just as important as initially gaining it. So choosing to continue to practice those literacy skills rather than become illiterate is extremely important, because it does help us better understand those concrete ideas and be able to apply them to our lives, or not concrete, conceptual ideas and apply them to our lives. Another takeaway is that people at lower levels of literacy can be hard to identify due to societal trends such as branding, which I mentioned with the brand loyalty. You know, they'll just say, well, I just really love this brand. And a lot of times it's masking that underlying issue of them not understanding the difference between, or a lot of times non-difference between a name brand and a generic brand. And then also internet access, with how we can now use text to speech or just click through links to where it's easy to click to navigate rather than having to type things in. That has also helped to mask that lack of literacy. Those at lower level economic levels have a higher chance of lacking functional literacy because of their lack of education, because of where they live, because of the society that they live in. And so they are considered at risk typically. And then finally, functional literacy can be majorly impacted by society, which kind of wraps up all of these ideas. And then finally, some classroom applications. So this is one that I really prescribe to, and I've prescribed throughout my whole career, but this article has really cemented this idea, is that instilling an appreciation for reading rather than just forcing students to read can have a long-term effect on their functional literacy. If you can get students invested in reading and really understanding why it's important to read and finding what they're interested in so that they continue to read, that's going to affect their adult habits, which will in turn affect their children's habits as well. But if we just tell our students, well, you're reading because you're supposed to read for this time because it's good for you, and not teaching them how to enjoy reading, that's not going to that's not going to encourage them to continue reading as they get older. Also, it's important to ensure students with lower socioeconomic status receive access to high quality education, as they're frequently already considered at risk in regards to literacy. And so making sure that we're providing that high level education, making sure that we are fully trained and that we understand all the concepts of education, and that we're providing teachers with high quality education as well to those students is just so important. And then finally, teaching the skills such as metacognition and text analysis, as well as word recognition, can help students to reach expected levels of literacy. So digging into that quad D, understanding the analyzing and synthesizing that information, teaching that to them in school can help to increase their functional literacy as they grow up and open a lot of doors for them, such as going to college, getting a bachelor's or master's degree. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting and very important to our lives as teachers. And then finally, here are my references. Thank you so much and have a great day.